One man became richer than entire kingdoms. Europe was struggling to survive, while one African empire controlled unimaginable wealth. But the more gold they revealed to the world, the more dangerous the empire became. In 1324, a king crossed the Sahara Desert with 60,000 people and so much gold that he accidentally destroyed the economies of 3 countries just by passing through them. He didn't conquer those countries. He didn't threaten them. He simply existed, and his wealth alone was enough to cause inflation across North Africa and the Middle East for the next 12 years. His name was Mansa Musa, and he ruled an empire that most history books today refuse to properly discuss. While European kings were borrowing money to fund their wars, while the entire treasury of England could barely fill a single room, this man controlled more than half of the world's gold supply. Not some of it, not a large portion, more than half. Every gold coin circulating in Europe, every gold thread in every royal robe, every golden crown on every European king's head, the raw material for all of it almost certainly passed through the hands of the Mali Empire before it reached them. This is not a story that begins with Mansa Musa. It begins 300 years earlier in a small kingdom called Kangaba, tucked into the upper Niger River Valley in West Africa. The people living there were the Mandinka, farmers and traders who had built a quiet, stable life along one of Africa's greatest rivers. They paid tribute to a larger empire to their north, the Soso Empire, ruled by a king named Sumanguru Kante, a man history remembers as brutal, powerful, and completely certain that no one could ever challenge him. He was wrong. In 1235 AD, a Mandinka prince named Sundiata Keita gathered the clans that had suffered under Soso rule and led them into battle at a place called Kirina. What happened there changed West Africa forever. Sundiata defeated Sumanguru Kante, dismantled the Soso Empire, and in its place built something the world had never seen. A federation of kingdoms united under a single throne, governed not by fear, but by law, trade, and shared prosperity. He called it Mali, and from that single battle in 1235, an empire was born that would grow to become the largest, wealthiest, and most powerful state in the entire medieval world. At its peak, the Mali Empire stretched across nearly 2 million square kilometers. It covered what is today Senegal, Gambia, Guinea, Guinea-Bissau, Mali, Burkina Faso, and parts of Mauritania and Niger. Its population has been estimated at between 40 and 60 million people, at a time when the entire population of Europe was barely 70 million. It controlled the 2 most valuable commodities on the medieval planet: gold from the mines of Bambouk and Bouri, and salt from the vast deposits at Tag Haza in the Sahara. Everything that passed between sub-Saharan Africa and the Mediterranean world passed through Mali, and Mali taxed every single ounce of it. The man who inherited this empire and took it to its absolute peak was Musa Keita I, known to history as Mansa Musa, which translates simply as King of Kings. He came to power around 1312 AD, and in the 25 years that followed, he transformed Mali from a powerful regional empire into a civilization that left the entire medieval world speechless. He built universities when Europe was burning books. He funded libraries when most European kings could not read. He constructed mosques so magnificent that architects were imported from across the Islamic world to study them. And in 1324, he decided to make the Hajj, the Islamic pilgrimage to Mecca, in a way that no human being had ever done before or has ever done since. The preparations for Mansa Musa's pilgrimage to Mecca began years before the journey itself. This was not simply a religious trip. It was a statement, a deliberate, calculated demonstration of power so overwhelming that it would force the entire known world to acknowledge what West Africa had built. When Mansa Musa finally departed Niani, his capital city, in 1324, what followed him across the Sahara was not an entourage. It was an army of civilization. The accounts recorded by Arab historians who witnessed the procession describe something almost impossible to believe. Mansa Musa traveled with 60,000 people, soldiers, servants, officials, wives, and subjects, all dressed in Persian silk and brocade. Ahead of him marched 500 slaves, each carrying a golden staff weighing approximately 2 kilograms. Behind him came a caravan of 80 to 100 camels, each carrying between 50 and 300 pounds of gold dust. The total weight of gold Mansa Musa brought on this single journey has been estimated at between 12 and 18 metric tons. When the procession arrived in Cairo, the Mamluk Sultan al-Nasir Muhammad prepared a reception worthy of what he assumed would be a notable foreign dignitary. What he encountered instead was something that shook his court to its foundations. Mansa Musa arrived so wealthy, so overwhelming in his generosity, that the Egyptian Sultan, ruler of one of the most powerful states in the medieval world, was reportedly made to feel inadequate in his own palace. Contemporary accounts describe Egyptian officials and citizens lining the streets, not in formal greeting, but in stunned, open-mouthed disbelief. What happened next changed the Mediterranean economy for over a decade. Mansa Musa gave away gold, freely, constantly, and in quantities that Cairo had never seen. He gave to mosques, to scholars, to beggars on the street, to officials who met him, to anyone who crossed his path. He spent gold the way ordinary people spend breath, without counting it, without measuring it, without appearing to notice that it was leaving his hands. The Egyptian historian al-Makrizi, writing a century later, recorded that Mansa Musa's generosity flooded the Cairo market with so much gold that the price of the metal collapsed entirely. Gold lost roughly 25% of its value across Egypt, Arabia, and parts of the Middle East. It took 12 years for the gold market to recover. This was not a man who had found a gold mine. This was a man who controlled an entire geological era of gold production. The mines of Bambouk, located in what is today western Mali and eastern Senegal, had been producing gold for centuries before Mansa Musa was born. The mines of Bure, further east, along the Niger River, added to reserves that were simply without parallel anywhere in the medieval world. European merchants had known for generations that gold came from somewhere south of the Sahara. They called it the land of gold. They had no idea where it actually was, who controlled it, or how it was produced. They simply received it through layers of middlemen at whatever price those middlemen decided to charge. The gold trade worked in a way that seemed almost supernatural to outside observers. Arab geographer al-Bakri, writing in the 11th century, described a system called silent trade, where Malian traders would leave gold on the bank of a river, beat drums, and retreat. Merchants from the south, whose identities were carefully protected, would then arrive, leave an amount of goods they considered fair, and disappear. If the Mali traders were satisfied, they took the goods and left. If not, they retreated again. No words were ever spoken. No faces were ever seen. The entire transaction happened in silence, and the source of the gold remained completely unknown to the outside world. But gold alone did not make the Mali Empire what it was. Salt made it equally powerful, for a reason that modern people struggle to understand. In the medieval world, salt was not a seasoning. it was survival. Before refrigeration existed, salt was the only reliable method of food preservation across most of the world. An army without salt could not keep its food. A city without salt could not survive its winters. The Mali Empire controlled the salt mines of Tagaza, a site so remote and so valuable that the buildings of the mining town were themselves constructed entirely from salt blocks because there was no other building material available in the surrounding desert. Mali taxed every block that left those mines, and because they also controlled the gold, they effectively set the terms of trade for the entire medieval world between the Sahara and the Mediterranean. There is a phrase used across the world to describe somewhere impossibly far away, somewhere at the edge of known existence. That place is Timbuktu. Today, the name is used as a joke to mean nowhere in particular. In the 14th century, Timbuktu was not the edge of the world. It was the center of it. By the time Mansa Musa incorporated Timbuktu into the Mali Empire, it had already become a destination for scholars, theologians, mathematicians, and astronomers from across the Islamic world. Mansa Musa commissioned the Jingwarabur Mosque immediately after returning from Mecca in 1325, designed by Andalusian architect Abu Ishaq al-Sahili, a man he had personally met in Mecca, and paid 200 kilograms of gold to bring back to Mali. That mosque still stands today, and its architectural style became the defining visual language of West African Islamic architecture for 7 centuries. Around it grew the University of Sankore, which at its peak enrolled between 25,000 and 30,000 students. At the same time, the University of Oxford had fewer than 3,000. The libraries of Timbuktu contained an estimated 700,000 manuscripts covering algebra, astronomy, medicine, law, and philosophy. Original intellectual works produced in Mali, not copied from elsewhere, representing one of the greatest concentrations of human knowledge ever assembled in a single city. The Moroccan traveler Ibn Battuta visited Mali in 1352 and left behind a striking observation. He could travel from one end of the empire to the other without fear of robbery or violence, something impossible in most countries he had visited across Asia, the Middle East, and Africa. He described roads that were safe, markets that were honest, and officials who were accountable. He had encountered a civilization that had built its own answers to questions of governance and society, answers that were, in several respects, more advanced than his own. Every civilization ends. The question history asks is not whether an empire will fall, but what it leaves behind. The Mali Empire began its decline after Mansa Musa's death in 1337. His successors proved unequal to governing 2 million square kilometers. Tributary kingdoms broke away, rivals fought over the throne, and the empire slowly fragmented from within. The final destruction came from an unexpected direction. In 1591, the Sayyadian dynasty of Morocco sent 4,000 soldiers armed with firearms across the Sahara. At the Battle of Tondibi, a Songhai army outnumbering them 40-1 was destroyed by gunpowder weapons it had never encountered. Timbuktu fell. The great libraries were looted. Hundreds of scholars were taken to Morocco as prisoners. The civilization that had educated 30,000 students at a time was dismantled within a generation. But the libraries did not entirely disappear. Families in Timbuktu began hiding manuscripts, burying them in desert sand, sealing them in clay jars, concealing them behind walls. In 2012, when militants occupied northern Mali, Descendants of those same families smuggled 350,000 manuscripts to safety in rice sacks and vegetable trucks, protecting what their ancestors had protected 7 centuries before. The Mali Empire's absence from mainstream history is not an accident of incomplete records. The records exist. Ibn Battuta's account exists. The Catalan Atlas of 1375 shows Mansa Musa on his golden throne. Europeans knew about him, drew pictures of him, wrote about him, and then, systematically, that knowledge was allowed to fade. The gold that built medieval Europe's cathedrals came largely from West African mines that Mali controlled for over 200 years. The wealth that financed the Crusades, the early Renaissance, the merchant republics of Venice and Genoa, much of it originated in a civilization that was never acknowledged, never credited, and eventually erased from what the world chose to teach its children. Mansa Musa crossed a desert with 18 tons of gold, crashed 3 economies with his generosity, built a university larger than anything in medieval Europe, and governed his empire under a legal system sophisticated enough to make foreign scholars stop and take notes. The fact that most people alive today have never heard of him is perhaps the most remarkable thing about him of all. The richest empire in history became one the world almost erased.